Charlene Thomas. And as she starts to join us and take the stage, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Charlene. Charlene Thomas serves as Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for UPS and is a member of the company's executive leadership team. Charlene began her UPS career in 1989, progressing through successive leadership roles and functions including operations, global marketing, corporate learning, and talent development. In her previous role as Chief Human Resources Officer, she guided UPS's transformation and HR initiatives to optimize the talent, leadership, and culture for the company's more than 528,000 employees worldwide. So that's a lot. I'm sure we could say so many more things about you, Charlene. And I really encourage everyone to take advantage of the Q&A function here, because when else are you going to be able to ask the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer of UPS some of those really pressing questions for today? So Charlene is going to be discussing examining the employee journey to operationalize diversity retention strategies. So please welcome Charlene to the stage.
Thank you, Charlene. It is a pleasure to be back with Opal again. It feels like you all are family. What a time that we're in. And hopefully everyone is healthy and attentive today for the session. I want this to be interactive. And I'm really excited to talk about this topic because really operationalizing DE&I is the way that the message lives on. I do want to give just a really quick story just to kind of frame things out. And I did not have a PowerPoint presentation because I really wanted this to be a dialogue, because really every organization will have a different approach, but I think the themes or the framework would be very similar. And I want to first start with your story and journey. However you enter the organization, whether you come in a DE&I capacity or if you're somehow placed into the role, it is really important for you to understand from a frontline point of view. I started my career with UPS as a part-time employee, and I moved throughout numerous operational and staff functions, which really gave me preview and preview to what all of the challenges around DE&I were at that time, but also being able to remain and have great relationships with frontline employees and employees throughout every level, because every employee's experience creates the culture, creates the environment, which really where DE&I has to live and breathe on an ongoing basis. So when I take a look at when I started at UPS, and Charlene did date me, I was only 5, so I'll say that, I really remember the first day walking into an operation and how I felt. And that's the most important thing about being a DE&I leader, is understanding how people feel. It is so much of a reality when you talk with anyone. It's a feeling. Whenever you go to some place, that's what stays in your mind. That's what you go home with. That's what you share. That's what you really draw that experience, whether it's good or bad, is how did that organization, how did that experience, how did the interactions make you feel from the entry position of an organization, because those are the key stakeholders. As well as a DE&I leader, that's the point. You have to resonate to that lowest level, because that then starts the overall culture and the journey and feeling of every engagement that will happen for future employees, customers, vendors, and suppliers throughout the life cycle of your organization. I want to also kind of share with you being very conscious to understand what pain points that you can fix and what pain points that you can't fix. And understanding some of the difficulties, most of what employees experience is communication. What's written communication, what's verbal communication, what is sentiment, what are understandings, what are myths, what are realities. And making sure that as a DE&I leader, you have to know what is believed, perceived, and what is real. How can we make sure that there's no discrepancies between those themes? Because in those discrepancies becomes inequity. People think and see things differently based on how it is communicated to them, how they receive it, or how it actually shows up in their environments. So those are the critical things. As you as a DE&I leader, you have to be able to walk in these operations. And virtually right now, we are having challenges because of COVID. So intentionally engaging in a digital world is making sure that you plan to have Zooms, you have virtual coffees, you have interactions where you can experience what employees are going through for to have an understanding of what you as a DE&I leader can do to kind of codify these themes or things that are coming out and encourage leaders as employees are sharing different events or concerns of how together you want to be able to achieve and address those. And the best part of this, and I think where DE&I gets the lift it needs to, setting out framework and guidelines that everyone can use and understand, and they're not complicated. And once you come up with the guidelines and framework, you then start having the ability to now solve some of these pain points. And the pain points don't get solved from the top down, the pain points get solved from the bottom up. So as you start to hear some of these concerns that people raise, you want to be able to now put them into addressable and unaddressable. Unaddressable means that the front line can't address them. They're larger issues or more issues that need to be brought up to another level. And those become things that you would then put on a roadmap of a way to address them. But you want to be able to identify quick wins, quick things that with framework guidance, understanding of the local leadership, and really your intervention, you can then take the front line and make them a part of their solution. And then when they take an active role, you make sure that they realize that no matter how big your organization is, they play an active role in DE&I, and that they absolutely have the ability to control and, more importantly, influence the experience in a positive way by making everyone feel included, by knowing everyone's ideas should be at least heard, and they should not be offensive, they should not discriminate, and they should also understand that even if an idea is not necessarily put into operation or into action, it was at least heard and appreciated, and that they are able to have an opportunity to seek other career endeavors or be promoted. And do they understand what the process is? Are there learning opportunities in the organization that you can share with them and that they can take advantage of? And will that help to improve not only their current performance, but also improve their ability to be considered by making them even a more qualified or desirable candidate for a future opportunity or a rotation? So I really want to kind of share with you my team's journey. And I think that I'm very happy to share with you kind of where we started. And we knew that as an organization of this size, I mean, this is quite difficult. We wanted to make sure we focus on the things that make the most sense. And that is, what does everybody need to understand at your organization? What do you want DE&I really to have the grounding statement to? So we went a part of a journey with a lot of our internal leaders to really create our strategy. And we launched our strategy efforts in the latter portion of January. And we actually launched our tagline on April 1st, which is "You belong at UPS." The feeling of belonging, letting everyone know, whether you're an internal customer, being an employee, a shareholder, a community member, as well as making sure that all of the world knows that we want to be inclusive. And by making sure that this is a message that is now resonated through your BRGs, through whatever communication you have as far as signature pages, inviting conversations in Zoom, in just exploration kind of messaging, but really talking through what does that mean at the lowest level. And we were able to launch that last week with such great fanfare. We had over tens of thousands of LinkedIn likes. We had a open formal session to which we kind of launched that with our end of Women's History Month last month in March, but really cascading this into how are we now going to unfold and action and operationalize and get our entire workforce engaged with what we're trying to drive. We want an inclusive environment. And how do we do that? We were setting very, very simple, very easily to use guidelines to help everybody identify and walk with us. And then as we continue down this journey, we've given milestones of things that we know inclusive companies do and are on our roadmap to continue to show our employees ways to connect with us, how to find out more information, having email engagements for them to send in ideas and suggestions, our DE&I council to which we continue to have folks participate and re-message out, not only internally, but we're also taking external best practices to infuse the great ideas that we continue to see from formats such as this as to how to continue to keep your organization innovative, creative, and relevant, so that topics that are happening outside of the organization, how is it impacting our employees and how they show up for work? So we have our social justice and equity task force where we have conversations set up to talk about what's going on outside and tackling those difficult topics and creating forums to where we have our leaders that are coming from public affairs as well as our foundation and other internal executives really having some of these discussions and letting them know, where does your organization stand? Where do I go to get information? How do I get engaged? How do I find solution if I'm having a problem? And really allowing the employees to have the proper way to seek assistance. In the cases of the things that we've seen socially, really, what are the pain points? Allowing employees to have a safe place to talk. And understand what support we can be for them, how we can be advocates for them, how we can partner with them, and how we can connect them either internally or externally to places and things that they may need. And really, I think the critical thing with our tagline is "You belong at UPS." We've had refresh to policy. I mean, you cannot think that in this day and age that companies that have been around for a long time always have the most relevant and even more importantly, contemporary policy. We also launched last week is a tattoo policy refresh. So this has been something that, we have seen our employees brought to our attention. And we knew that it was something that we needed to revisit. And we made sure that we looked at everything and we came up with ways for folks to show up to work, whether they want to have a tattoo and display it, but we gave them the proper construct for doing that, and that people feel welcomed, and it's not an inhibition for people to be promoted or for people to seek other opportunities or rotations, and that it was something that we celebrated from the senior level to make sure that even though we said it was okay, we were actually demonstrating and making sure that we had the ability for people to do it. Because in many organizations, there's conversation about things or changes, but if you're not modeling behavior, if you're not letting your respective leadership directly reporting to you and across the organization that I'm going to walk the talk and I'm going to make sure that those who work for me act and behave in a manner that is similar with what we have deemed as being where and how we want our organization to be. You want to make sure that as DE&I leaders that you have that ability to have the messaging be edified by your senior leadership, modeled for the rest of leadership, and then you want to get out and interact and be as a part of the frontline operation to ensure that the messaging from the top is resonating and is understood and is actually making a difference in the frontline operations. So I do want to leave an opportunity to have some questions about how we're living and breathing this most wonderful, inclusive commitment to people by just talking to you about how we want to retain our people. So retention strategies, and I want to kind of talk through why they're important, is because every group has a different dynamic. So once we've got this inclusive nature of everybody understanding and walking the talk, we have to understand retention of employees and engagement of employees really must have a structure. You have to know your data. You have to know who and why your folks are either leaving or not coming to your organization. and then having the approach that you can operationalize throughout your organization. Many pitfalls we find is we start out with great strategies and we try to task it with the top layer or with individuals that may not have the core constituency within their direct connection to have that solved. So when you're thinking of your retention strategies, know your data. But once you know your data, then you have to get with your stakeholders. And the stakeholders would be those who are over the operation, but those who are in. So as we talked about the frontline resignation, once you're looking to retain them, you need to ask them those very open-ended questions. Why did you come to this organization? Why would you want to stay? Why would you want to leave? And making sure as you hear those particular answers and that you're asking them to all individuals, diverse as well as non-diverse, many of those features are the same, but the solutions are different, because creating or enabling folks to do what I call the strategy execution really becomes with not only for them to divulge to you what the issues are, but how do they now become deputized in that solution? So we're not having to look at monitoring things, we're actually keeping engaged with activity. So we don't want to put through initiatives, we don't want to put through different educations or trainings when this is about being very mindful of how the operation or the organization runs on a daily basis, on how to insert those inclusionary efforts that really drive retention. And that is really where foundationally we're seeing not only the best traction, but also having high engagement and satisfaction when individuals are not waiting for senior leadership or someone outside or above them in the organization to solve a problem, to which once we get the buy-in from them in making sure that what is solvable in their case they do, then we can start putting together a larger roadmap into other areas that would be beneficial to solving a larger or macro problem within a respective group. So I've spoken for about 18 minutes, and I do want to leave some time to have some questions or just to give some additional sentiment. Charlene, if you'd like to open it up, or if you want me to expound on anything else, I'd love to have that conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'd love to jump in. I'm just pulling up some questions from the audience for you, Charlene. So let's hear. I have a question from Robert, who says, in an organization, it's so difficult to get quick wins because of so many layers of vetting. What are some examples of quick wins that can be pursued?
So, and quick wins really come in, I call it the frontline ownership piece. So where I thought that we got a quick win is having the candid conversation around policy refresh. And how often do you review policy, and when do you take suggestions? And we did a deep dive and had policy refresh not only in November of last year, but we also had with the tattoo policy. And we got that as a quick win to say, hey, we heard you. We're going to evaluate it. And then we communicated back with our HR leaders as well as the direct front line. So the quick win is to making sure that you're hearing problems, you're letting people know that their problem is on the roadmap, and then you quantify how and qualify what engagement or what activities will need to be done or to take place to get the result. And sometimes the quick wins aren't always 100% them getting what they intended, but there is a modification or there's progress. And sometimes people mistake a win with progress. It's more important to make progress because, as we all know, things have taken time to occur. It's going to take time to unwind, but for that to be something that you demonstratively make a point when you're trying to address a quick issue.
Awesome. Actually, and the next question from Erin piggybacks off of your mention of the tattoo policy. She asks, how did you set the proper parameters in a tattoo policy to create that inclusion?
So the best, I'm so proud of the culture team here and with the DE&I team. That this was an item that we have had for a long period of time. And to make sure that we set the policy, we made sure that we looked externally. We started looking at some known organizations that have had a very conservative approach, and then we took a look at how can we now uniformly apply this so that we can extend that privilege to everyone. So we used best practice. We brought in examples. We also had employees provide some input. And then as we crafted and molded all of those together, we then came out with a uniform policy. And then we also modeled kind of what we wanted it to look like and how people could be appreciative of the change in the policy.
Thank you. There's more questions coming in, Charlene. So, so I'm organizing those for you. Cordelia asks, she has two questions. How do you engage leadership? And then the other one is, have you set goals as to representation of women in leadership, minorities in leadership? If so, what are those and how do you ensure progress?
Okay, so let me address the first question, which is how do you engage leaders? And then that'll inform the other question. So engaging leaders is finding out what their pain points are. Where are they not performing? Where are they seeing apathy? Or have they not achieved milestones within the business group itself? And then draw that back to, do you not have the best talent? You're not getting the best performance. You're not getting the best overall results that you're looking for. And then talk about how can we improve your ability to do that. Generally, it's going to be talent is going to be at the core. If you have a people-driven organization, how do you now make them better by finding better candidates? So the best way to do is to help solve a pain point, to realize maybe you don't have the right talent, maybe you ought to consider, and then helping them with a core load. Show them an organization within either your peer group or within your respective business that is performing and has a diverse group, and why that group is doing well and why they're seeing better engagement. And it's easy and again, it becomes non-combative and it becomes a lot less competitive if you do this one-on-one. Use artifacts. Again, I say having the data matters, and people can't refute data. That being said, when you're looking to set goals and milestones, that's what you inform your team from, is you use artifacts to show how high-performing teams through representation do better, and how you can work with the respective group to set an aspirational goal or a journey to get to a better diversity outcome. And when you set those, and as we are setting ours as an organization, we are still refining. So what I will share with you, and I just met with my legal team before we came on the call, it's more about capturing the opportunity for improvement. And because in many cases, individuals want to run with stating, okay, I'm going to take X action or Y action, and you can be very exclusionary and you can be very deflating of your effort by polarizing a group or individuals by trying to index to a group or groups when they're underrepresented. They're underrepresented because there is an attraction issue, there's a promotion issue, there's an understanding issue. It's more about understanding the groups that you want and don't have, and really try to establish engagements with them by being able to bring that executive or that talent management team to that group to cultivate it into your pipeline so that they're available. And that's really what you need to focus on when you're talking about establishing goals and milestones, is the pipeline availability. Because you can set those milestones and then you will have to sub-optimize to promote off the street, because people are now looking at, okay, I have to have X% improvement, or I have to have X number, and that will be suboptimal because your organization will now be what I call it a skeleton with no meat on it, because you're not putting meat on the bone of what's going to be your core conversation. And quite frankly, you haven't addressed the inclusion issues for that group. So understand why the group you don't have that group is more important than trying to promote that group or try to attract that group without foundationally understanding what the gaps were as to why the group does not exist at the rates that you would like it in your organization.
Yeah, no, perfect. And I wanted to jump into another question. We have a lot coming in. Cindy is asking, Charlene, have you had to add more support for supervisors, managers of the frontline staff to help this live? If yes, can you share examples?
So I don't have to add any more. I think you just have to inform those that you have. I think, and I think you can think of it two ways. I mean, if your organization is not staffed, then you need to add the right appropriate level. So that there definitely is need for us to add folks where they're necessary. But to add folks for just this effort could be a pitfall because they may be kind of mono-focused on this effort and not understanding the pain points, having been in the roles to know what are the environmental things that could be precipitating some of these issues. So it's important to realize even the staff that you do have, help them solve pain points to where they're not executing or getting results that they need to by showing them how diversity will be beneficial to them in their jobs to get not only just to get people to be engaged, but to get discretionary effort and to really help them perform better as a leader, because that you can be elevated as a leader when your group is high performing.
Perfect. And we have about 3 minutes left. I want to throw in another question here. How do you work with HR in a way that drives clear swim lanes?
Oh, that's great. So the clear swim lanes is making sure whatever who the HR leader is, you and that leader have a consistent meeting schedule and agenda. So as you craft the roadmap, and I've gone with our new HR leader and made sure that we have clear understanding. This is what we seek to achieve. This is what we want to help in and partner with you, and make sure that we have the comprehensive programming and support to ensure that we meet not only the organizational need around human capital and talent, but we're also being inclusive and have diverse candidates and have a retention component to make sure we elevate and have equity throughout everything that we do. So it is absolutely a cadence to where you have to have a constant communication, and you're not in competition, but you're in co-opetition, and we make sure that the agendas are aligned throughout all of our initiatives.
I want to squeeze in this one from Benjamin, which I think piggybacks off of what you mentioned. What areas of DEI initiative are best handled internally, and when should you look to partner third party?
Well, so internally is talent development and talent, because again, your organization knows what things are important and what attributes make desirable candidates for roles. So that definitely should be something that's done internally, because you know the culture, you know how you need to onboard and make sure people are successful. Where you might want to outsource is with data, because how you are able to attract data, really trying to get a lot of those analytics and some of those forensics around things that you can kind of infuse external type of metrics to kind of know, okay, you know, is there a decline in having a certain availability? Then how would that then influence or impact your ability to attract a candidate? So with data analytics, it's always good to kind of bring in external census information to really gauge how you want to interact and really set agendas and strategies for improving areas.
Awesome. I've been taking selfishly notes over here on my end, but Charlene, we are at time. I have some more questions. So I want to reassure the audience. I'm going to send those over to Charlene so that she has them. They've just been coming in very quickly, but a lot of areas to cover. And a lot of what you mentioned is also helpful for me to mention to the group that we have a couple of polls that are in the lounge tab of the event. So Charlene talked a lot about, you know, the acquisition part of it. How are we making sure that we are being inclusive during the recruitment stages, and we have equity involved in that, so that we're bringing in the right people and making sure that everyone coming in is truly diverse. So there's some polling questions related to that. So thank you, Charlene. I want to get everyone, when you have a break, to answer the polling questions so we can hear from you guys on where are those priority areas. I heard a lot about leadership accountability with your new initiative that you guys just rolled out. So we are very lucky to have you here talking about that. So I encourage everyone, definitely. I'm going to get those questions to Charlene, but for now, I have to try to keep everyone on time. Thank you, Charlene. I'm going to wish you thank you again. Have a great rest of your day, and I'm going to get ready for our next keynote presenter.